Hello students, good evening. So before we start the lesson for today, or rather the conclusion of this open window, I request you all to get your books and then follow your books. Okay. So far what we have done is that Frampton Nuttall has gone to the village or to the country to get a cure for his bad nerves. And there he meets this Mrs. Sappleton, whose niece meets him first, whose niece comes down to meet him, and she tells him about Mrs. Sappleton's husband and two younger brothers and a dog, a spaniel dog, who had gone out for hunting and had died there in the moors, in the bog. Yes, now he had gone to Mrs. Sappleton's house with a letter of introduction from his sister. His sister used to live in this place, and so he had just gone to meet them so that he would know somebody in this country. So as he is talking to the niece, that is Vera, the aunt comes down and then she actually verifies what Vera has said by saying that, oh, my husband and my two younger brothers have gone hunting. They will return back and they will come in through the window and they will dirty all my carpets, she told Mr. Frampton Nuttall. And he gets very, very nervous. So as they're talking, she has a smile on her face and she looks out of the window. And then Vera also turns to look out of the window, open window, and there's a look of horror on Vera's face. And then seeing this look of horror on Vera's face, Frampton Nuttall also turns back to see what's the reason. And when he turns back, he sees Mr. Sappleton and the two brothers, that is, he sees three figures and a dog coming in towards the window. And then he gets really very, very scared. And one of the younger brothers is saying, hey Bertie, why do you bound? Why do you jump? He's saying. So the comprehension check, I hope you have done that. So today we'll do part 3. And what you see on the screen is the summary of part 3. What else can Frampton do but beat a hasty retreat? What else can he do but beat a hasty retreat? Means run away from there. Hasty retreat means quickly run away from there. Had he seen a ghost? The niece does have a knack for explaining an uncanny coincidence. So the niece really has a way of talking. She can really talk. She has a knack. She has a way of talking. An uncanny coincidence means unnatural, something unnatural happening or a strange event. She can really talk. Okay, let us continue with part 3, which is very, very short, and then I shall do the comprehension check with you. Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. At his stick means his walking stick. The gentlemen have a way of carrying a stick in their hand. Not because they can't walk, it's just a matter of style for them. So he grabbed wildly, he just went looking for his stick and hat. The hall door, the gravel drive and the front gate were dimly noted stages in his headlong retreat. So all these things he could see, and he knew that he had to go across all these things. The gravel drive, gravel is a kind of stone, small tiny stones or sand rather, drive from where the car comes in, and the front gate were dimly noted stages in his headlong retreat. He had to cross the hall door, he had to cross the gravel drive and the front gate. These were his stages in which he had to run. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid imminent collision. So as he was running out of the house, a cyclist was coming from the opposite direction. And this cyclist was riding a cycle, obviously, okay? So this cyclist had to run into a hedge. He had to turn his cycle and go towards the bushes. Hedge means a kind of a bush, to avoid imminent collision. So if he had not turned, if the cyclist had not turned and gone towards the bush or towards the hedge, they would have had a head-on collision. Imminent means sure collision. They would have had a head-on collision. So he ran into the hedge. He turned the cycle. Here we are, my dear, said the bearer of the white mackintosh. White mackintosh, remember in the beginning of the story or in the second part, we have one of those men carrying a white kind of coat. So that was the mackintosh. Mackintosh is a kind of a raincoat. It's made of some kind of plastic or rubber. Like we have a raincoat. Yes. So he gave the bearer of the raincoat means the person who was carrying that white coat. He gave it to Mrs. Sappleton. And then he said, who was that who bolted out as we came up? Who was that person who bolted, who ran out like lightning? Who was that? He asked Mrs. Sappleton. Then Mrs. Appleton replied, "A most extraordinary man, Mr. Nuttall." He says, Mr. Nuttall. Now, why does she say, Mr. Nuttall? Because she did not know who he was. He had no time to explain exactly who he was. So he says, somebody, Mr. Nuttall. So she did not know exactly who he was. He could only talk about his illnesses. He was talking, so as we remember, if you remember, he was talking about all his bad nerves to Mrs. Appleton. And Mrs. Appleton was least interested, least bothered. She was hardly listening to him. Because it's quite boring when you talk about your illness to somebody. So she was hardly listening, and so she said, he was talking only about his illnesses, and dashed off, ran off, without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived. So when you were coming, he just ran from here, even without saying goodbye, or even without saying a sorry. One would think he had seen a ghost. It seems like he had seen a ghost, the way he ran out from here, the way he bolted from here. Mrs. Appleton told this to this man, who gave her the white mackintosh or the white coat. "I expect it was the spaniel," said the niece calmly. The niece, that is Vera, she opened her mouth and began to speak, and she said, "I think it was a spaniel, the dog. He told me he had a horror of dogs." She was sitting here and telling them lies. It seems like the man, Mr. Nuttall, told her that he was very, very afraid of dogs. So she said, maybe he saw the dog, that is why he ran away. He was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere on the banks of the Ganges by a pack of dogs, and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creatures snarling and grinning and foaming just above him. So just look at her imagination. All this is her imagination. She's making up a story, and her story is full of lies about Mr. Nuttall. She told Mrs. Appleton and her uncles that, he told me about his fear of dogs, because he has a fear of dogs because once he was hunted into a cemetery. Cemetery means a graveyard where they bury dead people. So she said that once he was chased into a cemetery and he had to go down into a freshly dug grave. Somebody had died and they were going to bury that person in that hole, in that grave, and for now it was empty. So he had jumped into that grave, and these creatures, these dogs from up, they were snarling and foaming and grinning and barking at him from above the grave. And that is why she said he has a fear of dogs. But this story is all made up. He had said nothing like this to Vera, but she made up this story. Enough to make anyone lose their nerve. She says enough. Anybody would lose their nerve if they saw a dog like this, and if they have had such an experience of being chased by dogs and going into the graveyard, into the cemetery, and hiding in the hole, and the dogs foaming. Foaming is their white spit kind of thing coming out from their mouths. So anybody would be scared, and this would stay with them lifelong, she said. And the last sentence of the story, romance at short notice was her speciality. So when we use the word romance, it does not only mean a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman having romantic affair. It does not mean that. Here in this sense, it means finding occasions for fun and enjoyment wherever possible. Have fun, have enjoyment, have a laugh wherever possible, and that we can say romance at short notice. Okay, don't mistake this word. So this story is by Saki. Saki may be the pen name, and the actual name is H.H. Munro. H.H. Munro. So Saki and H.H. Munro are the same people. Don't get confused if this question comes in the exams. Okay, Saki may be the pen name, P-E-N, pen name, and H.H. Munro the real name. Okay, so this is the lesson. Now we'll go for comprehension check. So this is the comprehension check on page 61. Why did Frampton rush out wildly? Yes, so you need to, this answer you need to give according to the marks. If it is 1 mark, then you give a short answer. But if it is for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 marks, you need to make the answer longer. The more the marks, the longer the answer will be. You need to go back into the story. Yes, going back to the beginning of the story, if it is for 5 marks. If it is for 1 or 2 marks, then keep your answer short. So why did he run out wildly? Because he thought that he had seen the ghost of Mrs. Appleton's husband and her 2 younger brothers. So that will be for maybe 2 marks. But then If you have to go for 3 or 4 or 5 marks, then go back to the story that Vera told him. What was the girl's explanation for his lightning exit? Lightning exit means that speed, with the speed that he ran out of the house. What did she say? How did she explain the situation to her aunt? Here you have to write the story of the dogs that he had, that Mr. Nuttall had fear of dogs. That story you need to write. That was how she explained. Okay. Now, is this a mystery story? Give a reason for your answer. Is it exactly a mystery story? It's not exactly a mystery story. It is a story about the imagination of a girl, of a young girl, and how she plays a joke or how she plays a prank on Mr. Frampton and tells him a very imaginative story, which he falls prey to. He believes that story, and he becomes very, very scared, and he runs out from there. So it is not exactly a mystery story, but it is a story of a girl who has great imagination. Okay. Next one. You are familiar with the irony of the situation in a story. Remember the cop and the anthem in class 7, supplementary reader. Which situations in the open window are good examples of the use of irony? So irony, remember irony in the cop and the anthem? Yes, the cop and the anthem. This fellow is there in the story who wants to go to jail. He does not have anywhere to stay, and he's finding ways and means to go to jail. So at least he thinks at least he'll get some food to eat and a warm place to stay. And in the end, he comes across his home, his own house when he was a young child. And then he realizes, no, I should not go back to jail. I should stay out and do work and live. And this is the time when the police comes and catches him. When he has decided that he doesn't want to go to jail, then the police catches him. And all along he is wanting to go to jail, but then the police people refuse to put him into jail. So that's the irony. When he does not want to go, then he is put into jail. That's the irony. Now in this story, what are good examples of irony, you think? It's about Mr. Frampton. How he has bad nerves. He has gone to the country to get cured of his bad nerves, but then this girl has frightened him so much that his nervous system breaks down. His bad nerves become worse. That's the irony. He's gone there for rest, but he's getting more. He's going to get even more sick here. Now, number 3. Which phrases, sentences in the text do you find difficult to understand? So this task is up to you. You read the text carefully again and underline any sentence, any paragraph which is very, very difficult to understand for you. And if you find it difficult and you cannot understand it, then you send me the paragraph in WhatsApp and I shall send you an individual explanation of it. Okay, so if you find anything difficult, please send me a picture of it. Underline or highlight it and send it to me. So that's all for today. That's the end of this lesson, and so that is the end of our PT2 syllabus as well. I'm so sorry for troubling you all, for disturbing you all during your holidays, but then it had to be done. So that's the end of it. Now you can relax and watch the video whenever you want to. Okay, so take care. Now you can enjoy your holidays. Bye everybody. Take care. Happy New Year.